They said my best friend slipped while climbing. The official report was cold, clinical. Peter Callahan, age 32, fatal fall during a solo ascent in the Alps. Accidental death, case closed. But Peter hated climbing. He always had. When we were kids, he fell from a tree and broke his leg. The doctor said he healed fine, but his mind never did. Heights terrified him. Even years later, he'd freeze up on balconies, shake on escalators. He once joked he'd rather be buried alive than go mountain climbing. So when the police told me he'd died in a climbing accident, I knew it was a lie. The funeral was fast, too fast. A closed casket, no details, the kind of tidy box you give to the public when you don't want questions asked. But I had questions. I'm Jonathan Drake, freelance investigative journalist. My job is digging up what others bury, and Peter wasn't just my best friend, he was like a brother. We'd studied together, drank too much whiskey together, covered for each other's failures. If there was one thing I knew in my bones, it was this. Peter Callahan would never strap on climbing gear, so I went looking. His apartment was stripped clean, like someone had erased him. But they miss things. They always miss something. Behind a stack of books on his shelf, I found a folder. Old parchment maps, edges torn and browned with age, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Not hiking trails, cathedrals, spiral staircases, underground chambers, and tucked between them was a laminated card. A Vatican archives pass, issued in his name. That was when the bottom dropped out of the world. Peter had never mentioned the Vatican, not once. He wasn't religious, he wasn't even Catholic. He thought churches were beautiful but hollow. So why the hell did he have an access pass to one of the most restricted archives on Earth? The more I stared at it, the more wrong it felt. A memory surfaced. 3 weeks before his death, Peter had called me late at night. His voice had been tight, shaky, not like him at all. He said he'd found something that could change everything we thought we knew about the church. I laughed it off, told him to get some sleep. Now I couldn't laugh. His death wasn't an accident. It was a cleanup. I turned the map under the desk lamp. The ink shimmered faintly, like oil on water. The lines weren't just directions, they were instructions. Arrows marked downward paths, spirals coiled inward, symbols repeated like warnings. At the bottom of one sheet, in Peter's handwriting, a single phrase. They keep it below. My stomach tightened. The Vatican had always been a fortress of secrets, locked vaults, banned books, rumors of forbidden rituals hidden under the city of Rome. But I'd always thought that was just conspiracy theory, the kind of late-night internet garbage Peter used to laugh at. Now he was dead, and his handwriting was telling me the conspiracies were real. I sat there with the map spread out, the Vatican pass in my hand, and felt the first true weight of fear pressed down on me. Because if Peter had found something worth killing him for, then I was already next in line. The next day, I booked a flight to Rome. I told no one, not my editor, not my family. Secrets are like sparks. If you let them out too soon, someone else puts out the fire before it catches. On the plane, I kept replaying his last voicemail. His voice cracking, breath uneven, whispering. If something happens to me, John, follow the map. Promise me you'll follow it. I hadn't promised then, but sitting 30,000 feet over the Atlantic with his words burning in my ears, I realized it didn't matter anymore. The promise had already been made the moment I saw that card. Peter Callahan hadn't fallen from a mountain. He'd fallen into something buried far deeper, and I was going to find out what it was, even if it killed me too. The Vatican doesn't advertise its secrets. Tourists queue for hours in the sun, craning for a glimpse of Michelangelo's ceiling, while 7 stories below them lies a labyrinth no guidebook dares mention. The archives are spoken of like myth, Restricted corridors, forbidden shelves, whispers of books chained shut because even reading them could damn your soul. That was where Peter's access card pointed me. I told myself I was just here to return his things, to ask questions, to make polite inquiries. But the truth was already gnawing at me. My friend had died for this place. Whatever had pulled him here had killed him, and I needed to see why. The entrance to the archives was guarded by 2 Swiss guards in ceremonial halberds, their bright uniforms a strange contrast to the grim stone. I presented the pass. My pulse raced as the guard studied it, his eyes scanning me like I'd already been judged. Then he nodded, handed it back, and opened the gate. I was inside. The air was cool, dry, heavy with the scent of dust and leather. The halls stretched endlessly, shelves groaning with centuries of parchment. Dim lamps buzzed overhead, casting long shadows across the marble floor. It didn't feel like a library. It felt like a tomb. A figure appeared between the shelves, a man in a black cassock, his silver hair neat, spectacles perched low on his nose. His presence was quiet, measured, but the weight of authority clung to him. "Father Matteo Bellini," he introduced himself, voice calm but eyes sharp. "You must be Mr. Drake?" My throat tightened. "Yes, Jonathan Drake, a friend of Peter Callahan." The priest's expression flickered almost imperceptibly before settling back into composure. "Ah, yes, such a tragedy. But I might ask, why are you here?" I hesitated, then held up the pass. He left this, and maps. I think he wanted me to continue his work. For the first time, Bellini's gaze hardened. Some doors are closed for a reason. If Peter wandered too far, it is no wonder misfortune found him. The words were meant as comfort, but they carried a warning. Before I could respond, a voice rang softly behind me. "You're not the only one asking questions." I turned. A young woman stood a few feet away, clutching a notebook to her chest. Dark hair framed her face, her eyes sharp with curiosity that matched my own. "Isabella Conti," she said quickly, before Bellini could object. "I'm a doctoral researcher at Sapienza, medieval cartography, and I've seen your friend's maps before." My heart jolted. "Where?" "In here," she said, tapping her notebook. "Copied from fragments I wasn't supposed to see. Fragments that match your Peter's drawings exactly." Bellini stepped forward, his voice firm. "Ms. Conti, this is not your concern." But Isabella didn't flinch. She looked straight at me. He wasn't just tracing old manuscripts. He was charting something real, something below us. The silence pressed in. The priest's face had gone pale. "Enough," Bellini said sharply. His voice echoed down the aisle, startling in its sudden harshness. "Both of you should leave. The archives are not for chasing ghosts." I felt anger rise, but I bit it down. Pushing too hard would only close the door faster. "Of course, Father," I said smoothly. "We'll respect your rules." His gaze lingered, searching me for cracks. Then he nodded curtly and turned, disappearing deeper into the shelves. The moment he was gone, Isabella whispered, "He's hiding something. They all are." She slipped a folded paper into my hand. It was a sketch, another map, spiral staircases descending past labeled chambers, crypta, sanctum, inferius. At the very bottom was a word scrawled in red ink, custodes. "The bound ones," she translated under her breath. "That's what the old texts call them. Guardians chained beneath the city." My pulse hammered in my ears. Peter's handwriting had said the same. They keep it below. Isabella's eyes locked with mine. "If your friend died for this, it wasn't an accident. He got too close. And now, so are we." I folded the map, slid it into my pocket, and tried to steady my breath. The archives loomed around us, endless, silent. But in that silence, I swore I heard something else, something faint, like chains rattling in the dark. Rome is a city built on bones. You feel it when you walk the streets, the weight of centuries pressing down, every stone hiding another layer of the dead. But the Vatican's catacombs are different, older, hungrier. Isabella and I waited until the archives closed for the night. The guards sealed the upper gates, their halberds clattering against the floor. When the lights dimmed, we moved. She led me past rows of shelves into a narrow corridor, one she'd clearly memorized. Her steps were quick, confident, her notebook clutched to her chest. "Down here," she whispered, pushing open a half-rotted door. Behind it, a stairwell spiraling into darkness. The air shifted, cold, damp, carrying the faint scent of mildew and something else, iron, like blood left too long on stone. I hesitated. "You've done this before." "Not this far," she admitted, "but Peter must have his notes. They match the markings on these walls." I looked, and sure enough, carved into the stone beside the stairwell were faint sigils, spirals and lines repeating like warnings. The same symbols I'd seen on Peter's maps. We descended. The stairs seemed endless, stone slick underfoot, the only light our flashlights cutting narrow cones through the dark. Shadows stretched long and thin, as though the walls themselves shifted closer. At the bottom, the passage opened into a wide chamber. Arched ceilings dripped with condensation. Niches in the walls held bones stacked like bricks, skulls staring out with hollow sockets. Isabella's light caught on something carved above the archway ahead. Latin, worn but legible. "Clausum tenetur vincilis," she translated, her voice tight. "The closed is held by chains." A chill slid down my spine. We stepped inside. The chamber was vast, a circle lined with iron rings hammered into the stone floor. Each ring held chains, long, blackened, stretching inward to a central pit. The air vibrated faintly, like the low hum of a buried engine. Then I heard it. A whisper, faint, layered, like a dozen voices speaking at once. "Turn back." The beam of my flashlight trembled in my hand. Isabella froze beside me, eyes wide. "Did you—" The chains rattled. From the pit, figures began to rise. They weren't solid, not entirely. Pale shapes, humanoid but wrong. Their bodies stretched and bound by chains that pierced through their limbs and rib cages. Their eyes were hollow voids, their mouths sewn shut by threads of light, yet the voices came anyway, pouring out from nowhere, echoing from every corner of the chamber. "Turn back." One lurched closer, its chains scraping the stone, sparks flying. The sound made my teeth ache. Its face hovered inches from mine, empty sockets burning faint blue. I should have run, but I couldn't move. Isabella grabbed my arm, yanking me back. "Don't engage, just keep moving." We tried to skirt the chamber's edge, but the bound ones followed, their movements jerky, chains dragging, voices overlapping until the words blurred into a single chorus of warning. "Turn back! Turn back! Turn back!" I forced myself to breathe, to focus. "They're not attacking us." "Not yet," Isabella hissed. We reached the far side of the chamber. Another archway waited there, blocked by a single massive chain that crossed the entrance like a bar. I reached out instinctively. The moment my fingers brushed the metal, the bound ones shrieked. The sound was unbearable, piercing, shaking the chamber so violently dust rained from the ceiling. The chain snapped, not fully, just enough for a link to fall, clattering against the stone. The vibration rippled outward, shaking the pit, making the bound ones convulse violently. And beneath it all, another sound rose, a laugh, deep, resonant, so far below us it felt like it came from the marrow of the earth itself. Isabella's face went pale. That wasn't them. I pulled her through the archway, forcing my legs to move. Behind us, the bound ones writhed, their chains rattling furiously, voices shredding into static screams. We stumbled into another corridor, hearts hammering. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air was colder now, heavier, every breath harder to take. Finally, Isabella whispered, Peter was here. He must have triggered the same thing. That's why he wrote, "They keep it below." I nodded, my throat dry, because now I knew what the bound ones were. Not guardians of us, prisoners. And whatever they were bound to, it was waking up. The Vatican wakes early. Bells toll before dawn, summoning the faithful while the rest of the city still dreams. But below those bells, beneath the cobblestones and polished marble, darker rituals stir long before the tourists arrive. I hadn't slept. Isabella and I had fled the bound ones, hearts pounding, and somehow made it back to the surface before the guards' rounds. But sleep was impossible after what we saw. The chains, the whispers, the laugh that didn't belong to anything human. I needed answers. By mid-morning, I slipped back into the corridors of the Vatican archives. Isabella warned me to stay quiet, but I've built a career out of sneaking into rooms I wasn't supposed to enter. And now, the stakes were more than a headline. They were Peter's life, or what was left of it. That's when I heard voices. Low, deliberate, echoing from behind a carved wooden door at the end of a deserted hall. I edged closer, pressing myself against the wall. The door was cracked just enough for sound to slip through. Inside, I recognized one voice immediately. Cardinal Lorenzo Vitale. His Italian was smooth, commanding, the kind of voice you instinctively obey. "The chains are weakening," Vitale said. "Callahan was careless. He triggered the chamber before he was ready." My blood froze. Callahan. Peter. Another voice answered. "Father Matteo Bellini." His tone was hesitant, uneasy. "Then why allow outsiders access at all? Why grant him a pass to the archives if you feared this?" Vitale's reply was sharp. "Because we needed him. His kind of mind, restless, skeptical, unshaken by doctrine. He was perfect to test the seals, to see how far they could bend before they broke." Bellini's voice cracked. "You used him." Vitale's laugh was low, humorless. "We used them all. Every bound one down there was once a soul the church offered. Monks, scholars, priests. Their chains are the walls that keep Malthus bound." The name hit like ice water down my spine. "Malthus, the laugh in the pit," Bellini whispered, almost pleading. "And if the chains fail entirely." For the first time, Vitale's tone shifted, still cold but tinged with reverence. "Then the world will be remade. Malthus will walk again, and the church will stand at his side, not as servants," his voice swelled, "as architects of the new order." I gripped the wall so hard my nails split. This wasn't conspiracy theory. It wasn't rumor. The church wasn't guarding against evil. They were preparing to unleash it. Peter hadn't died by accident. He'd been bait, and maybe worse, maybe he hadn't died at all. I leaned closer, heart hammering. Bellini spoke again, quieter now, almost broken. "And Drake? He asks questions. He suspects too much." Vitale's answer came quick, final. "Then he will join his friend in chains." My breath caught. The door creaked. Shadows moved inside. I scrambled back, flattening myself into an alcove just as the door opened. Vitale emerged, his scarlet robes flowing, his face serene, as though he hadn't just confessed to conspiring with a demon. Bellini followed, head bowed, lips tight. They walked past, neither glancing my way. But as they disappeared down the corridor, Bellini hesitated. His eyes flicked up, meeting mine for the briefest second. He didn't speak, but the look was enough. Fear. Regret, warning. When they were gone, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. The walls of the Vatican felt tighter now, suffocating. Every statue, every crucifix, every painted saint seemed to watch me with hollow eyes. I thought of Peter's maps, of the words scrawled in his hand. They keep it below. No, they weren't keeping it below. They were feeding it. And if I didn't act, I'd be next. The map in Peter's handwriting wasn't just a guide, it was a dare. Each spiral marked another descent, another chamber deeper than the last. Isabella and I followed it through narrow stone passages that smelled of rust and damp earth. My flashlight beam cut across faded frescoes, angels with broken wings, saints with their faces gouged out. Whatever these walls once celebrated, they now only mourned. We reached the first marked circle close to midnight. It was a chamber wider than any we'd seen so far, its ceiling vaulted, black with soot. Rusted hooks hung from chains bolted into the arches above. Broken racks and iron wheels lay scattered, remnants of a torture chamber abandoned centuries ago. Except it wasn't abandoned. The air pulsed with whispers, growing louder with every step. Chains stretched across the floor like veins, converging at a central platform, slick with dried blood. And from those chains, figures rose. The bound ones. They emerged like smoke solidifying into flesh, bodies torn and pierced by the iron that held them. Their mouths were sewn shut with light, their eyes burning pale blue in hollow sockets. Their forms flickered between human and skeletal, trapped in endless torment. But one of them wasn't a stranger. My flashlight caught his face, and my knees almost gave out. Peter, Isabella froze. Oh, God. It was him. The hair, though tangled and streaked with white, was his. The sharp jawline, the familiar shoulders, altered, broken, but undeniably him. Chains wrapped around his chest, puncturing through his ribs, binding him to the platform. His eyes, once warm and sharp, were now black voids lit faintly by blue fire. I staggered closer. Peter, it's me, Jonathan. The other bound ones writhed, their heads jerking, voices rasping in overlapping echoes. Turn back, turn back! But Peter's head tilted. His mouth twitched against the threads of light that sealed it. Then, impossibly, he spoke, not with lips, but with a voice that bypassed sound and landed in my skull. John! My chest clenched. He strained against the chains, every movement tearing more black smoke from his body. His face contorted, flickering between recognition and something darker. You shouldn't be here, I stumbled forward. They said you died. They lied, Peter. I knew it. I knew you wouldn't climb that mountain. His hollow eyes locked onto mine. I didn't climb. I fell. They pushed me down here, used me, and now I hold what must not rise. The bound ones shrieked louder, their voices shattering into a storm. Isabella grabbed my arm, pulling me back. Jonathan, we can't stay. Look at him. He's not free. He's part of it now. I shook her off, my vision burning. I can get him out. I have to. Peter's body convulsed, chains tightening, dragging him closer to the pit. His voice roared inside my head. No! If I break, he breaks free. Malphus rises. Don't do this. The name cracked the chamber like thunder. The walls groaned, dust raining from the ceiling. The other bound ones thrashed violently, their chains sparking against stone. And deep below, I heard it again. The laugh, Malphus. Peter's voice wavered, torn between love and command. Leave me, John. Leave before you join us. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. I can't. You're my brother. I won't leave you chained like this. The bound ones surged, their chorus booming through the stone. Turn back. Turn back. Isabella pulled harder, her face pale with terror. If you try, you'll unleash it. Can't you hear him? The chains aren't just his prison, they're the world's. I looked into Peter's broken eyes and saw it, the flicker of who he was, buried under agony and shadow. For a heartbeat, he looked like the man I remembered, the friend who'd laughed with me until dawn, who'd sworn we'd grow old side by side. And then the flicker was gone. His voice was colder now, distant. Go, while you still can. I let Isabella drag me back. My chest ached with every step. The bound ones' screams followed us, rattling the stones, echoing through my skull. When the chamber finally shrank behind us, I collapsed against the wall, gasping. Isabella gripped my shoulder. "You saw it, didn't you? He's gone. Whatever's left of him, it's bound to Malthus now." I buried my face in my hands because I couldn't deny it. Peter wasn't dead, but he wasn't alive either. And if I tried to save him, I might doom the world. We didn't speak for a long time after leaving the chamber. The sound of Peter's voice still echoed in my skull, torn between warning and desperation. Isabella walked ahead, flashlight beam jittering with every step. Her face was pale, her jaw tight. She didn't want to look at me, and I didn't want to look at her, because the question was written on both our faces. Was Peter begging us to save him, or begging us to leave him bound? The corridor narrowed, walls closing in like a throat. The air grew colder, heavier. Finally, it opened into another vault, smaller than the last, but no less oppressive. Here the bound ones were fewer, only 3. Their chains bolted directly into the walls. They hung like marionettes, their heads bowed, whispers leaking from them in fractured tones. One lifted its head as we entered. Its eyes glowed faintly, and though its mouth was sewn with threads of light, I swore I saw lips form the shape of a word: help. Isabella froze. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, throat dry. She stepped closer, her flashlight trembling across the figure's torn body. Unlike Peter, this one looked weaker, its form flickering, as if whatever bound it was already unraveling. "It's suffering," she whispered. "God, Jonathan, they've been left here for centuries." "Don't," I said quickly. "You saw what happened when I touched the chain before." But she shook her head. "Maybe freeing one doesn't doom us. Maybe it's mercy." Before I could stop her, she pulled a small chisel from her satchel, something she must have carried for copying inscriptions, and jammed it into the ring that held the chain. The bound one jerked violently. The chamber screamed with its voice, a chorus that rattled every bone in my body. "Isabella!" I lunged forward, but too late. The chain snapped, not with the metallic clatter I expected, but with a burst of light and smoke. The bound one convulsed, its form stretching upward, its voice splitting between agony and release. For a moment, I thought we'd saved it. The threads of light sealing its mouth burned away, its face tilted upward, eyes glowing brighter, and it whispered, not in warning, but in relief, "Thank you." Then it exploded. Its body collapsed into ash and smoke, vanishing into the cracks of the floor. The chain dissolved into dust, and the ground beneath us rumbled. A sound rose from below, not the faint chuckle I'd heard before. This was a laugh, clear and booming, reverberating through the chamber, deep, guttural, drenched in malice. Malthus. The laughter rolled through the catacombs, shaking dust from the ceiling, making the walls groan. My stomach dropped as I realized freeing the bound one hadn't saved it. It had fed him. Isabella staggered back, horror etched across her face. What did I do?" The laughter swelled, filling every crack, every shadow, and then a voice joined it, rumbling like an earthquake. "Another chain falls, another soul released. Soon, I'll walk again." The bound ones that remained thrashed violently, their chains sparking against stone. Their chorus returned, louder now, desperate. "Turn back, turn back, turn back." I grabbed Isabella, yanking her toward the exit. The ground split beneath us, narrow fissures opening, bleeding heat and sulfur. We sprinted through the corridor as Malthus's voice boomed, closer now, almost joyful. "Your mercy is my freedom. Break them all, and I shall rise." The passage trembled, bones shaking loose from niches, skulls tumbling to the floor. Isabella tripped, nearly falling into a crack, but I dragged her up, my lungs burning with every breath. Finally, we stumbled into a narrow stairwell, slamming the heavy door behind us. The tremors dulled, though the laughter still echoed faintly through the stone. Isabella collapsed against the wall. shaking. I thought I was helping. I thought... I gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. We can't free them. Don't you see? The chains aren't punishment. They're prison bars. Every time one breaks, he gets stronger. Her face twisted, torn between guilt and disbelief. So we just leave them there forever, bound in suffering? My voice cracked. If the alternative is Malthus walking free, yes. Silence pressed down. The only sound was our ragged breathing. And beneath it all, faint but undeniable, the echo of laughter drifting upward. Peter had begged me to leave. Now I understood why. The air in the catacombs had changed. After Isabella broke the chain, it wasn't just cold anymore. It was heavy, charged, like a thunderstorm waiting to split the earth. Every step we took downward felt like walking into a heartbeat, the stone walls pulsing faintly with each distant thrum. We weren't alone anymore. Chanting drifted through the corridors, low and rhythmic. Latin phrases rolled together, repeated in a cadence too precise to be spontaneous. Torches flickered ahead, their light bending shadows across the carved arches. Isabella froze beside me. That's not the bound ones. I nodded, jaw tight. It's the living. We crept forward until the corridor opened into a massive vaulted chamber. My breath caught. Dozens of priests and robed figures stood in a circle, their hands raised, voices merging into a single guttural prayer. At the center, carved into the floor, was a sigil spanning the entire chamber, spirals, chains, runes that pulsed with crimson light. And standing above it all, arms outstretched, was Cardinal Lorenzo Vitale. His crimson robes shimmered in the torchlight, his face alight with a fervor that was almost inhuman. Behind him stood acolytes in black, each holding chalices filled with blood that steamed as though boiling. Vitale's voice cut above the chanting. The chains weaken, tonight they break, and when Malthus rises, the church will stand not as wardens, but as rulers. My stomach turned. This wasn't heresy whispered in shadows. This was liturgy. Beside me, Isabella whispered, "He's really doing it. He's trying to free it." Before I could answer, a hand clamped on my shoulder. I spun, ready to strike, but froze when I saw the face. Father Matteo Bellini. He looked older than before, his eyes hollow, his cassock disheveled. He raised a finger to his lips. "Quiet," he breathed. Isabella's voice was sharp. You knew. You let Peter walk into this." Bellini flinched as if struck. I tried to stop him. God help me, I tried. But Vitale has more power than you can imagine. He twisted the council, silenced the few who questioned. Peter was curious, determined. I couldn't hold him back. I shoved him against the wall, rage boiling. "You used him. You let him become one of those things." His eyes watered. "You think I don't carry that guilt? I hear their voices every night. I see their faces. But listen to me. This ritual cannot finish. If Malthus steps free, the bound ones will not hold him. Nothing will." The chanting swelled, rising to a fever pitch. Vitale raised a dagger, its blade etched with the same sigils that marked the floor. An acolyte stepped forward, exposing his wrist. I realized too late what was happening. Blood spilled freely, crimson pouring into the grooves of the carved sigil. The lines glowed brighter, pulsing, alive. The ground shook. Vitale's voice thundered. "The chains are not eternal. They break with blood. They break with will. Tonight, the last seal falls." Bellini grabbed my arm. His voice trembled. "You want to save your friend? Then stop Vitale. Because if Malthus rises fully, Peter's soul will be nothing but kindling." My heart pounded. Peter's face, twisted in chains, begging me to leave, flashed in my mind. Isabella pulled a crucifix from her satchel, gripping it like a weapon. "We can't let them finish. Tell us what to do." Bellini's gaze darted to the glowing sigil. "Disrupt the pattern, break the blood channels. Even a small fracture might stall the ritual." Another acolyte stepped into the circle. The dagger flashed again. More blood spilled, hissing as it touched the floor. The chamber trembled harder. Dust rained from the ceiling, and from deep below, that laugh rose once more. Clearer, closer. Malthus was listening. Vitale's eyes blazed with zeal. He turned, scanning the shadows, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he'd seen us. But his gaze moved past, drinking in the ritual as though it were a sunrise. I clenched my fists. Fear warred with fury. Peter was chained below. Malthus was clawing his way free. And Vitale, this man in red who called himself a shepherd, was the one holding open the door. No more waiting. I looked at Isabella. "We end it tonight," she nodded, her face pale but steady. Bellini pressed a small silver key into my hand, his voice barely a whisper. "The side altar. It leads closer to the heart of the sigil. Use it wisely." We slipped back into the shadows, the chanting rising behind us like a storm. And as we crept toward the altar, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground itself was breathing, each pulse pulling us closer to something vast, ancient, and hungry. The air deepened as we moved closer to the heart of the ritual chamber. The chanting behind us was relentless, a tide of voices pouring blood and will into the stone. Every torch along the wall sputtered and bent inward, as if drawn toward a single gravity. And then I heard it. John. The voice wasn't human anymore, but it was familiar. Too familiar. I froze. Isabella tightened her grip on my arm. "Don't. It's a trick." But I knew that voice. We turned a corner, and there he was. Peter Callahan. Or what was left of him. He stood at the threshold of a secondary chamber, his body chained from shoulder to ankle, each link glowing faintly with runes that pulsed with every heartbeat of the ritual. The chains didn't just restrain him, they animated him, pulled his limbs taut, guided his movements like a puppet carved from flesh and smoke. His face was gaunt, stretched, half covered in shadow. His eyes were pits of black fire, but when they met mine, I saw it. Just a glimmer. Recognition. "John," he rasped, his voice layered, fractured between his own and something darker. "You shouldn't have come." My heart twisted. "Peter, they told me you were dead, but you're—" "Worse," he cut me off, straining against his bonds. The chains groaned, sparks spitting where they rubbed against stone. "I am the lock now, my life, my soul. It keeps him under. If I'm freed, Malthus rises." Isabella's voice was sharp. "Jonathan, do you hear him? If we break those chains, we undo everything." Peter's gaze flicked to her, and for a moment the fire in his eyes flared. "The church used me, just like they'll use you. They don't care who suffers as long as the chains hold." His voice softened, breaking. "But you were my brother. You promised you'd follow the map. You promised you wouldn't leave me behind." The words hit harder than any blow. I stepped closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. "Tell me what to do. I can't— God, Peter, I can't just walk away." The chamber shook, dust drifting from the ceiling. From deep below, Malthus's laughter rose, louder now, savoring the moment. Peter's chains rattled violently, dragging him forward until he collapsed to his knees in front of me. His face was inches from mine, his breath hot, reeking of ash. "Free me," he whispered, voice trembling. "Please, end this." But his eyes flickered, blue for a heartbeat, then black again. Two voices layered inside his skull, one begging, one commanding. Isabella yanked me back. "Jonathan, that's not him talking. It's Malthus. He wants you to break the seal." I shook her off, my chest heaving. "It's Peter. I can still see him in there." The bound ones around the chamber thrashed violently, their chorus rising, screaming into my bones. "Turn back! Turn back! Turn back!" I clutched my head, the voices splitting me apart. Peter grabbed at the ground, pulling himself closer despite the chains tearing his flesh. "John!" Don't let me die like this. Don't let me rot in their cage. My vision blurred with tears. My best friend, my brother, the man who had pulled me through college, who had kept me alive when my own family gave up, now reduced to this. And still, Malthus laughed. I dropped to my knees, hands shaking, the axe heavy across my back. My heart screamed to swing it, to shatter the chains, to free the only family I'd ever chosen. But my mind, God help me, my mind knew Isabella was right. Peter wasn't just a prisoner, he was the lock. If I freed him, I'd free the thing beneath. I pressed my forehead to the cold stone, choking on the decision. I can't do this. Peter's voice cracked, raw with pain. Then you're no better than them. The words cut deeper than any blade. The chamber trembled again. Vitale's chanting grew louder, the sigil's light bleeding under the door like fire. Malthus was close, too close. Isabella pulled me to my feet. Jonathan, we don't have time. Choose, him or everyone else. I staggered back, eyes locked on Peter's. His face was twisted in agony, but for one fleeting second, I saw him, the real him. His lips moved silently, but I read the words. Don't let me out. The chains yanked him backward, dragging him into the shadows. His scream echoed until it was swallowed by the roar of the ritual beyond. I stumbled after Isabella, my chest hollow, my soul tearing itself apart, because I had chosen, and the choice had broken me. The chanting was thunder when we burst back into the main chamber. Cardinal Lorenzo Vitale stood at the center of the glowing sigil, his scarlet robes whipping in the rising wind. The acolytes around him raised chalices of blood high, their voices breaking with fervor. The grooves of the carved floor ran red, channels filled to overflowing. Each drop hissed as it touched the runes, igniting brighter light. The bound ones that ringed the chamber convulsed, their chains snapping taut, their hollow eyes blazing like dying stars. Their chorus drowned the chanting, shrieks of pain and warning clashing with Vitale's hymn. Isabella clutched my arm, her face white. He's breaking the last seals. I barely heard her, my gaze locked on the floor. The stone was shifting. The sigil's spirals weren't just glowing. They were turning, grinding against each other like gears. And from the center fissure, smoke poured upward, thick, black, suffocating. The laugh came again, not distant this time, not muffled. Here, Vitale raised the dagger I'd seen before, its blade pulsing with the same crimson light. He slashed it across his palm, his blood spilling freely onto the seal. His voice rang out, booming like a commandment. Chains break with blood, chains break with will. Malthus, rise and walk! The fissure exploded. The chamber rocked violently, stones splintering. A geyser of shadow erupted, coiling into wings, vast and jagged, tearing the air. Two burning eyes opened in the smoke, black fire spilling outward. The weight of them alone dropped me to my knees. Malthus. The bound ones screamed as their chains ripped from the floor, shattering stone, whipping through the air like living serpents. Several acolytes were torn apart instantly, their bodies flung into the walls. But Vitale only raised his arms higher, eyes alight with ecstasy. Glory, glory to the new covenant! I staggered to my feet, grabbing Isabella before the shifting floor swallowed her. Father Bellini appeared from the side altar, his cassock torn, his face pale with horror. This is madness, he shouted, his voice almost lost in the roar. Vitale, you'll doom us all! Vitale turned, his expression serene. Doom? No, brother, salvation. The old God failed us. Malthus will raise the church to its rightful throne. The smoke surged, forming more of the demon's shape, a torso of flame, wings scraping the vaulted ceiling, chains hanging from his limbs like trophies. His voice thundered, shaking the marrow in my bones. Free! At last! The sound shattered several lamps, plunging half the chamber into darkness. Bellini grabbed my arm, pulling me close. His eyes burned with desperation. "Jonathan, the sigil! It feeds him! Break the channel, spill your blood over the lines, disrupt the pattern, anything!" My hands shook on the axe's handle. The glowing runes seemed alive, writhing like veins. My mind screamed that touching them meant death. But then I saw Peter's face again, twisted and bound, begging me not to let him out, and I realized this was the only chance. I charged. The axe came down hard, splitting one of the glowing grooves. Sparks erupted, a shockwave blasting me backward. The line sputtered, flickered, and dimmed. Malphus shrieked. The sound shattered stone, dropping acolytes to their knees, blood pouring from their ears. His wings flailed, chains lashing like whips, crushing 2 priests in an instant. Vitali's calm finally cracked. "No! Hold the channels!" He thrust his bleeding palm against the seal again, reigniting the broken rune. Isabella hurled a broken torch, smashing another chalice. Blood splattered across the floor, staining the runes wrong, breaking their symmetry. The chamber trembled harder, the ground splitting open. Half the bound ones collapsed, their bodies snapping into dust as their chains disintegrated. The survivors thrashed, shrieking louder than ever. Malphus's eyes burned brighter. His laughter returned, twisted with fury now. "Even broken, I rise. Nothing stops me." The smoke condensed, his body taking fuller shape, clawed hands, jagged teeth glinting like obsidian knives. Bellini raised his crucifix, shouting prayers that dissolved in the roar. He turned to me, desperation tearing his voice raw. "Jonathan, it has to be you. Your blood, your choice. It can lock him again." The floor collapsed between us, a chasm splitting the chamber. Isabella screamed, clinging to a pillar as stones rained from above. Vitale stood in the storm like a prophet, eyes blazing, arms raised to his new god. Malphus loomed fully now, wings spread wide, fire dripping from his jaws. I gripped the axe, my knuckles white, my chest burning with terror. Because this wasn't myth anymore. This wasn't Peter's scribbled map or Vatican rumor. This was apocalypse, clawing its way into the world, and I was standing in its mouth. The chamber was collapsing. Stones rained from the vaulted ceiling, smashing against the floor. The spiral sigil glowed and sputtered, broken and reforged in a constant struggle between blood and will. The bound ones shrieked louder than ever, their chains tearing against the walls as Malphus rose higher, his form nearly complete. His laughter rolled like thunder. "Your world is mine. Your faith is my feast." Vitale stood in the storm, face radiant, arms stretched wide. "Take me, Lord. Let me be your voice." One of Malphus's chains lashed out, wrapping around the cardinal. His scream was ecstasy, not fear. Before he was yanked upward into the smoke and torn apart, the demon's head turned toward me, 2 burning eyes locked on mine. "Jonathan Drake, you carry doubt, rage, blood. Perfect for the seal. Kneel, and I will make you more than man." Every bone in my body shook. My knees buckled, not from worship but from the sheer gravity of him. Isabella clung to the pillar across the chasm, her face streaked with blood and dust, screaming my name. And then I heard another voice. "John." From the smoke near Malphus's chest, a shape struggled forward. Peter, still bound, still pierced with chains, but visible for one last time. His eyes flickered faintly blue, the last fragment of the friend I knew. "Don't listen," he begged, his voice shredded. "Don't give him what he wants. Finish it." Tears burned my eyes. "Peter, I can get you out. I can—" "No." He shook his head, chains rattling. "If I go, he goes. My soul is the last link. Don't free me, end this." The ground split wider. Malphus's roar shook the marrow of my bones. "Break him, Jonathan. Choose me or lose everything." I staggered toward the sigil, the axe heavy in my hands. Bellini's voice carried from across the divide, hoarse but unyielding. "Your blood must rewrite the seal. Only choice can bind him again." Choice. I looked at Peter, my brother, my friend, my ghost. His body trembled. but his eyes held mine steady. "Do it," he whispered. "Seal him. Let me go." I screamed, swinging the axe. The blade split the floor, carving into the spirals. My blood dripped onto the runes, hissing, fusing with the lines. Pain tore through me like fire, but I didn't stop. "By my breath," I roared, "and my will, stay buried." The sigil erupted in light. Chains shot upward, white-hot, wrapping around Malthus's wings, his arms, his throat. He thrashed, roaring, his form fracturing into smoke and fire. Peter's scream pierced through it all. The chains ripped him back into the abyss, his form dissolving, eyes locked on mine until the last instant. "Thank you." And then he was gone. The fissure slammed shut. The chamber went silent except for the groan of settling stone. The bound ones vanished, their voices cut off mid-cry. The air stank of ash and blood, but Malthus was no longer there. I collapsed, gasping, every muscle torn. My blood pooled into the broken grooves, the last of its glow fading to dark. Across the chasm, Isabella called out, her voice trembling. "Jonathan, did it work?" I forced myself upright, leaning on the axe. "He's sealed. For now." Bellini staggered closer, his face streaked with soot. His eyes met mine, heavy with something between relief and dread. "You broke him, but at a cost. The last seal isn't stone anymore." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He looked at me with pity. "It's you." The words sank like lead. I felt it then, the echo in my veins, the faint pulse of chains inside my blood. I wasn't free. I was the prison. Malthus's whisper confirmed it, faint, curling through my skull. "You bound me with your breath, Jonathan. That breath is mine now, every beat, every dream. You cannot keep me caged forever." I closed my eyes, trembling. When I opened them, Isabella was staring at me, horror and gratitude battling in her gaze. "You saved us," she whispered, "but what will happen to you?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The Vatican would bury the chamber, write another lie, cover the blood with marble. The world above would spin on, oblivious. But deep inside me, something stirred. Malthus hadn't been destroyed. He was waiting, patient, amused, and I carried him with me. I gripped the axe, dragging myself toward the stairwell. My voice was raw, broken, but steady. I went to save my friend, I lost him, and in sealing the demon, I chained myself. I looked back at the darkness one last time. And now, every night I wonder, did I save the world? Or just delay its funeral?